know Rami's going to be there. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think of Rami's going to look like? Good, great, terrible. What are we going to see?
Historically biggest that he's ever been. Mark my words. Slam dunk.
I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution. And we are back for another installment of Heavy Muscle Radio on this May 8th, 2023 evening. And of course, I'm here with the technician, Chris Aceto, who is poised to take his children to camp. Explain what camp is. A lot of people don't know what camp is. Well, I thought growing up, Chris, that camp was just an extension of school. I thought everyone went to camp. I didn't know that it was only people who could pay for camp went there. But in Long Island, camp was like an extension of the school year.
No, before we started the show, I said I got to find something for my 3-year-old and 6-year-old to do all summer. And, you know, you're battling, of course, video games, right?
Right.
And the idea that there's no kids outside anymore. I tell my kids when I was not 3 and 6, but let's say 8 and up, 9, 10, just the people were out on the street, walking around, kids in the neighborhood, having fun, doing stuff, because there was nothing to do in the house. Now there's video games. So to offset and fight video games, you know, I was thinking like, oh, I got to send them to like some type of sports camp. But there's not many sports camps and that type of stuff around. And then you told me that you went the whole entire summer to camp. They kicked you out of the. They kicked you. They shipped
my
you.
My sister and I didn't know. The minute the school year ended, the camp bus pulled up to the front of the house, and not only were we gone a longer day than for school, because they would pick us up at like 8 in the morning, and we wouldn't be back sometimes. Like one of the camps was a little far away. It was like a 45-minute bus ride. And we would be back at like 5:30, 6 o'clock at night. It was a long day.
And what would you do at the camp? Was it a sports camp or was it a?
I went to several different ones. No, it was like an all-purpose camp. So you'd go, like, they'd have swimming twice a day, which I really wasn't so thrilled about, especially the crazy swimming I was all about, but not the instructional swimming. But I did learn how to swim. And then they would have crafts, and they would have, you'd play baseball, you'd play soccer, dodgeball. There was a million things going on. So it kept us, pretty active. Some of the camps I went to had horseback riding. There was one camp I went to that I loved the most, which was the one that was far away. They had a fish pond. It was huge, and they stocked it with goldfish. And some of the goldfish were humongous in there. And they would give you these little rods, like a little piece of wood doweling with like a string, and they would bend a pin, and they'd give you bread, and you'd have to fish for these things. And you can go, there was like little paddle boats, and initially when I started, it's like competing in bodybuilding. Initially, you think everyone's natural because you don't know about steroids. Then I realized that the kids that were catching the big crazy fish were bringing their own hooks from home with the little barb on it, because the pin, the fish would fall off of it because there was no barb to hold it, in place when the fish bit on the fish hook. So I started bringing in my own hooks. I became a fishing, because you could take the fish home with you if you catch them. I became, after about 2 years of going there, the number one fish guy. And I would sneak off from my camp group during the day to go fish. And I would like hide in the trees, and I would fish all day. And of course they would call my parents, and I'd get in trouble. And my father, my father was a disciplinarian, but when it came to ridiculous stuff, like he didn't get upset. So like they would call him and say, "Your son's not with the group. He's sneaking off, and he's with the fishing and boating all day." My father's like, "What is he doing fishing and boat?" My father didn't even understand what I was doing there. He's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm catching fish. I bring them home and I sell them to the fish store here, the aquarium store, and I trade them for for stuff that I want." So my father thought that was like so like entrepreneurial that he never yelled at me for it. They actually wanted to kick me out of the camp at one point, and my parents had to come up and like my father had to schmooze him over a little bit because my parents figured, well, we're paying for this. You're not kicking him out of the camp, you know. And it was expensive. I can't even imagine what camps cost today. My grandmother used to pay for camp because she had money and she would give my parents like money every summer for my sister and I. I think it was like $1,000 each. That was a lot of money back in the 80s.
Who was it? Your grandmother on your mother's side or your father's side?
Of course, the Jewish. Let me explain something. There are some certain stereotypes that are true. Jewish people, camp is part of school. So the school year ends. All the Jewish kids go to camp. Some kids actually go to sleepaway camp, which we never did. My parents weren't into that. But some kids, they go for 8 weeks. They go. It's usually in Pennsylvania, these sleepaway camps, because it's not as
Maine,
warm there.
Dave. It's Maine. I'm telling you.
Or Maine. Yeah, Maine has them too. It's usually in cooler places so that it's not like oppressively hot because you're outside a lot. And you go to sleepaway camps. There's cabins and bunks, and I had friends who went every summer. They loved it, but I never wanted to really leave home. I liked going out of the house during the day, but I wanted to be back at home, at night. But it's a big thing, and I'm surprised that they don't have more camps down here in Florida. We're having trouble finding something like that.
Yeah, it's strange. I mean, it's more than a cottage industry in Maine. I mean, once the end of school year hits, all these millions of little camps and cottage type camps and sleepaway camps on lakes and streams, and they all open up.
Maine, that's big. Yeah, I bet there's a lot of sleepaway camps.
People primarily come from the greater New York area just because it's a 1 hour flight and people can take their private jet up, Dave, on the weekend if they want to see little Johnny. And
isn't it funny? No, most people don't understand. Like, you think that of Maine as like this backcountry type of state, but
it is.
It is during the winter because no one wants to go there. But in the summer, all the very wealthy people love Maine. I remember there was a couple of I had my track coach in college. He had a place in Maine, and every summer, when the school year was over, he would go to Maine, and that was his place. He just loved it there, and I never really understood it because to be honest with you, I've never been to Maine at all, which is terrible. You live there.
It started out for wealthy people, of course, because they wanted to, back in like the 20s, they wanted to escape Manhattan, heat in the summer. So they would come and build what's considered a cottage, like Newport, Rhode Island, right? Cottages, which is really like a 5,000 square foot house on a cliff, where you don't really need air. They didn't have air conditioning then, so you didn't need it. You could go out and enjoy the cool breeze, and they have it on islands, and that's how the wealthy people started to come.
I'll tell you one thing though, I really got good at sports because of camp, because I was exposed to every different type of sport there, from hockey to baseball to obviously soccer. I was playing on a regular basis already, so but because I was playing all summer, I was good at everything, because you had to be, because you don't want to be the guy that sucked on the team. So, eventually you just, you learned how to do everything. So I was good at all boxing. We did everything there. I mean, so I like the fact that you could be multifaceted, and I could do anything, when I was a kid. So this is sports, like, I don't know if you can call it camp. I guess it would be. There's because in Florida, it's too hot in the summer. So there's an indoor place that does like soccer, dodgeball, baseball, everything's indoor. And I saw one of the guys who's there. He's they're advertising. He was a pitching coach, where he is a pitching coach. He was I guess he played baseball in college and major leagues a little bit. And I'm like telling my wife, that's great. We give Logan a pitching coach. Where do you get a pitching coach? She's like, my wife's like, it's going to throw his arm out. It's bad for his shoulder. I said, but if he's good, pitchers make a lot of money. I said, and they give scholarships for that.
Dave, to show you how times have changed, because I took my son out the other day on his bike, and he's sick. 9. And so, the helmet, right?
I know, it's ridiculous.
And when I was in elementary school, you mentioned dodgeball. We called it kill ball. And Dave, the gym teacher would give you bonus points for picking off the kid in the head. In the head.
Chris, when I went to school, the gym teachers played, and they would, if you got hit with the ball from the gym teacher, you were almost knocked unconscious. You know, my
Dave,
friend
stop.
was like really short.
Dave, I swear to
Yeah.
God, I was just gonna say, and the teacher played, and he would like be sweating like a pig, and he would take
It was
the
like
ball,
it was
the
like
ball.
statistic 101 over there, sadism 101. My friend, who's actually the endocrinologist now that I go to, we were best friends. He was really he's still short, but he was really short in school. And I remember one time the gym teacher threw the ball so hard, it hit him in the head. It knocked him halfway across the room. I didn't think he was going to get up from it, to be honest with you. You could never get away with that today.
That was bonus points with my gym teachers,
And he shook it off and got up and kept playing. No one knows.
I used to think the gym teacher had the greatest job ever because I realized, God, after this class, he's got another class coming in to play kill ball, and he'll play all day long. So he'd go home on a cold, February day to his wife, and she'd say, "What you do today?" She'd play kill ball with all the kids, 7 years old.
But you know what? It toughened you up. If you could take a shot from the gym teacher in the head, you could pretty much do anything. You wanted. You weren't afraid of anything. So, that was pretty funny. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. I know you're taking. Where are you going? Your kids are going to what kind of camp are they taking?
This summer. Well,
I thought you're leaving today. You said you got to go to camp.
Oh no! Today's basketball. Just basketball. Basketball. It's like intramural basketball, which is only on Sundays, so it's
Gotcha. Okay. Well, let's talk a little bodybuilding, I guess. You know what? Before I get to bodybuilding, not that because no one's people who watch the show are really not interested in bodybuilding. I got a new obsession, Chris, and you know what? It's crazy, but my kids bought a Rubik's cube. Okay, home. I guess my wife bought him one in Target.
Yeah, this one.
And my son's like, "Can you do this, Dad?" And I'm like, "I used to be able to do it when I was like your age or probably a little older." He's like, "I don't believe you." Now, of course, I don't remember how to do it. I remembered a couple of things, how to get solve certain areas of it, but I don't remember how to do the whole thing because it was a lot of moves. And, that was it was probably 20, what is it, 40 years ago?
Yeah.
I feel like my father now. But so when the kids went to sleep, I got no sleep last night. I watched one of these YouTube tutorials. The thing is like 28 minutes long. I watched it about 6 times. And certain parts probably 35 times because I'm a slow learner, but I learn by repetition. And by 2 a.m. when I went to sleep, I solved the cube.
Yeah.
Now, I think I think I got all the moves down. So I got to impress my son today with solving the cube. But I was looking online, and it's really insane. There are kids who can decide. You know what the world record for solving the Rubik's cube is?
I can't even imagine, like seconds.
It's like it's like under 2 seconds. Watch this kid.
Opa.
That was. I think that was a joke, but no.
Dave, Dave's crazy. Dave, you're crazy. Now you're gonna try to find this kid and get him on the show and ask.
Yeah, I got to get him. No, but there are kids who could do it in like 7 seconds and stuff like that. These guys are absolutely incredible. But I will tell you this: it's like a puzzle. Like if you know all the moves and everything like that and how to do it, it's really easy because I used to do it as a kid really fast too, and. But it's one of these skills. I had these 3 skills when I growing up in life that I wanted to learn, and I thought I'd never be able to. One was reading, because before you know how to read, reading seems like it's almost an impossible task, right? It's like you're never gonna be able to do it. And then when you learn how to read, it's like, holy mackerel, this is a crazy skill. Driving a stick shift was another thing I never thought I was going to learn how to do. For some reason, it just seemed too complicated. And I wanted to get the stick shift car, this BMW back in the day, and I took a lesson because 4 people tried to show me how to do it. I couldn't do it. I couldn't coordinate it. I got a lesson from this guy. He'd been teaching stick shift, he said, for like 50 years. He was an old guy. I said, this guy's never going to be able to teach me. He taught me. So that was another skill. And then solving the Rubik's Cube was the third skill that I always wanted to get. I thought I'd never be able to do because it seemed it's really hard, unless you know these moves. And these moves are not easy. It's like how anyone ever came up with it and figured it out is beyond me, because you have to be a genius to do this.
and skill number 4, parenting, David, which is you're still working.
Yeah, I'm still working on that, Chris. I haven't even gotten close to.
Well, if you figure out how to go to like the next level, let me know.
Oh, that's crazy. Yeah. So those are my things. All right. So I want to talk bodybuilding. I noticed that the I don't know if you followed it. I did a video on it about 2 weeks ago. Tarek El Gunti, who's a friend of mine, I would say a good friend of mine, who works for the Olympia promotion. You know, him and Tamer run muscle contests, but they also promote the Olympia. And Tarek has this Olympia TV show with Chris Cormier. And they had done a show on, you know, whether certain top tier bodybuilders were successes or failures, as they called it. And Ian Valliere was mentioned, and Steve Kuklo, and Antoine Vaillant, and a few guys were mentioned in there. And, you know, the headline bothered a lot of people. And I'll tell you why. It wasn't that they were critiquing him, because we critique people all the time on this show.
It bothers me already.
Yeah, it was bothersome because they were from the Olympia. So in other words, the Olympia was is the biggest show in the world, and they're part of the promotion team, and then they were critiquing athletes.
Well, hold on.
Which I thought was
those 3 names that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Antoine, Ian, and who else?
There was several people in there. It was Antoine, Ian Valliere, Steve Kuklo.
They're not finished.
No, of course not. But they were trying to like evaluate whether they were successes or failures, and it just came off like, you know, like they were saying they were failures essentially because they didn't achieve a certain level. But, you know, regardless of if they were right or not, you know, because I don't think they were doing it maliciously. They were doing it for headlines, obviously. And Tarek actually since then has apologized that maybe his words that he used were not correct. And like I said, he's a good guy. Like, so I'm not
he's a very good guy.
Yeah, he's not like a guy who's like trying to start trouble or anything like that. It's
absolutely, I agree.
So,
but your words have meanings, you know what I mean? And
yeah.
headlines have meanings, and I mean, but at the same time.
But what my point was, Chris, was that certain media agencies can't go to certain places. Like, I don't think it's appropriate for the Olympia people who promote the Olympia, or even the Arnold people who promote the Arnold, to critique the athletes in terms of future potential. Just like I don't think it would be fair for a judge who judges them to critique an athlete for future potential. Because if I have a judge who says I have no potential, you know, or he doesn't think I'll ever win the Olympia, I don't want that guy judging me, right? Because obviously he's in his head, he's dismissed me as being someone who. Now, it's one thing to critique a contest that already happened. That's okay. But for when you start projecting into the future, you know, you can't do that as a judge. And as a promoter, you're promoting these guys are competing in your show. So you can't say this guy, yeah, he competes in the Olympia every year, but he'd probably never win the Olympia. You know, I think that's crossing the line. Like, you and I can say that because we're not connected to the judging part of the sport or the promotion part of the sport.
Yeah.
In a sense.
Yeah.
What is your feelings on that?
I mean, I agree with you. It's like, you know, people have their places, and different shows, whatever podcasts have their places. I just would not, you know, if I was connected to the Olympic, I have no problem criticizing things or critiquing things or taking criticism for that matter. But if you are connected with the Olympia, you want to make sure that there's a line that you don't cross where fans could, you know, come away thinking that you've already made decisions about people, about their future. Not only that, but there's a respect level. You know, I can say, like, Ian looked terrible at that show. But at the same time, you know, I'm not connected to judging, and I'm not connected to the Olympia. But I would also say, you know, and I've done this with lots of athletes, is, you know, including people I've helped right on the show, saying, you know what, it wasn't his best. He didn't look good at this show, or at a show where I thought he looked great, I said, he looked A+. So just I can say Ian Valliere didn't look really good at that show. You know, at this show, this was his all-time best, and it was like a grand slam for him.
Right, but you could, I mean, also, let's say we were critiquing Ronnie when he lost the Olympia to Jay. You as a critique or a critic, you know, you and I could say, you know what, we think Ronnie might be done because, you know what, he has a lat injury. It looks like it's He's got atrophy there. That's usually not a good sign. Usually it's nerve related. He probably won't win another Olympia. He's not going to be Jay Cutler. I mean, you could say that. I mean, as you and I. But if I'm the people promoting the Olympia and I say my 8-time champion is never going to win another Olympia, he's done. I mean, you think Ronnie wants to do the Olympia after hearing that from the promoters?
Well, saying. Dave, I try not to. It's not even proper to go over the line until it's like way, way, way after a show. But
no, you and I have said that certain people should maybe not compete.
Give me a minute to finish what I'm saying.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Like zero chance to speak here.
Sorry.
I'll never go over the line with a judge. Like right after a show, I would never ask a judge, because I don't think it's appropriate, because that's his job and he's connected with the show somehow, whether, technically he's not an employee of the Olympia, but he's judging. I would never go up to a judge right after the show or 2 days after the show, or text him 5 days after the show and say, hey, what you think, what you think between second and third, or first and second. I would let him, I would give him a lot of time before I would even ask him. And then I wouldn't necessarily blab it out on a show and say, I spoke to, Bill, or I spoke to Steve, and they had so-and-so who's ninth, this place in prejudging. And then he ended up in ninth place because of XYZ. I mean, the show is the show, but I mean, you got to keep some level of what seems to be fairness there, if that makes sense. So people can come across as being biased or unfair when they're connected to the Olympia, and they're making criticisms of people's potential. I mean, it's fine if you're connected to the Olympia, even for that show, to say, like, what, this is how I saw the Olympia 1st through 8th at the, at this past Olympia. But it's not right, I don't think, to say, well, this guy who got 8th is done, or this guy who got 9th is done, or this guy can never break the, he got 8th or 9th and he'll never crack the top 5.
Right. That was my point. Like, you could ask the judge why he had a certain guy at 2nd place or 3rd place. I don't think that's inappropriate, but to ask the judge on the record, do you think this guy will ever win the Olympia, or is he good? That's crossing the line, because first of all, the judge doesn't know how this guy's going to improve. And secondly, that would be, I think, crossing the line, because then, who wants to be judged by someone who thinks that they can't win an Olympia? So,
well, if you remember Sean Ray years ago, remember when at the press conference at one of the Olympias,
right,
there was a judge at the press conference who commented to Sean, like, "Oh, you'll never win the show because you're not big enough." And he was like,
I remember that. God. He went crazy, right?
He went crazy, and rightfully so. And what? They got rid of the judge. I don't think the next day, I don't think that person, whoever said it, you'll never beat Dorian, or you'll never win the Olympia, you're not big enough.
Yeah.
I think they removed that person from the judging panel. So
I forgot that. Yeah, right. He said, I don't want that guy judging me. Because if he doesn't think I can win, then why would I want him even looking at me, or evaluating me? He's already made up his decision,
Yeah.
But anyway, so I think that Perrick and that show has to be, skate a very fine line, critique the shows that happened already. Don't project into the future, because you are promoting, the Super Bowl of bodybuilding. And I think that's the risk when you do that. So the difference is that in bodybuilding, the problem is that, you're trying to promote it. You're trying to wear 2 hats, essentially. You're trying to promote a show, and then you're trying to be a critic at the same time. I think it's difficult to do that and not upset people. Whereas you and I can upset people all we want. It doesn't matter, because we're not promoting a show and we're not judging a show. So
yeah.
Anyway, I just thought that it was a topic that kind of popped up, and I figured let's address it. Now, I noticed that I wanted to get your opinion on this. Jeremy Buendia, who won, I think he won three men's physique Olympias.
Yeah,
hasn't competed for quite some time. He's making a comeback. He's going to be competing against Aaron Banks, who's the current reigning champion. I wanted to ask you what you thought about the Jeremy Buendia comeback. He's only in his early 30s, I think. I don't think.
Yeah, what is you have to see him on stage, but the level of competition, cut off Jeremy Buendia's head, and I think he blends in with a lot of other people. In other words, on stage, you might you'll be looking for him in prejudging, because he's won the title obviously more than once. Right. But that, if you want to use the cliche words, leveling up, that division is leveled up times 5. every year for like the last 3 years. So I don't think he has. I think he will struggle to regain a title in that division, because the depth in that division, even if you're not a fan of the division, is amazing. What I mean by that is I don't follow all the guys in the division. I don't know like the names and this and that. It's just something I don't do. But I watch the prejudging when it happens, at the Arnold, and I watch it at the Olympia, the two shows that I like to go to, and the guys are phenomenal. That's not to take anything away from Jeremy, and he may improve a lot compared to where he's been in the past. It's just that there's so many people, quote, with his physique that are capable of, probably sneaking by him. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that I'd actually like to see him do like bodybuilding, to be honest with you, because I think he always had great legs, and he was actually a really good bodybuilder prior to doing men's physique. He just wasn't big enough. He's added a lot of size, obviously, to be able to stand with these guys in the men's physique division. I think he'd be a good 212 bodybuilder, to be honest with you, because he has legs. Anyone who's got legs, to me, it's hard, like you said, to go backwards. And when he first was competing in men's physique, he wasn't as big. His waist was teeny tiny. He had that like freakish proportion. I don't think he's got, like you said, that freakish proportion anymore, in the sense that he's gotten bigger on top, but his waist is a little bigger too. And I think that with his leg mass he's got, I think he actually would do well in 212. And I don't know if he'll try that, but it'll be interesting. Look, everyone loves a great comeback. The guy won 3 Olympias. He was, the most dominant guy of his time. And he's still young by bodybuilding standards. I think he's still in his early 30s.
Yeah, he's young.
So, I want to see him come back, but I think there's, like you said, other top 2, the second guy at the Olympia, 3rd place, 4th place, 5th place, are probably going to be difficult enough for him to beat, much less, Aaron Banks, who's crazy dominant right now.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's always hard to come back when you've been away from the craziness of being like psycho tunnel vision for shows.
Right.
That's probably going to be the biggest challenge, is how do I get my motivation? Because sometimes, the dumbest question, right, Dave, you probably asked is, Dave, how were you motivated when you were competing? I mean, you were just so crazy self-motivated, right? I mean, it's a question that you don't even, and a lot of great bodybuilders would not even know how to approach that question to even begin to answer it.
Right.
But when you have a layoff, everything changes. It's hard to get back that like super killer mentality, that super contest prep mentality that was like just part of your DNA before. So that makes
your physique changes too, Chris. And
your physique does change.
And the competition evolves. That's the problem. That men's physique division has changed a ridiculous amount. Jeremy was the biggest guy back then. Now he's not. So it's going to be tough. Yeah, it's going to be a tough.
Well, I mean that. The irony is, I say I don't follow it. I don't follow the names, but I love the physiques. And I realized at the last Olympia, I said, "Oh, this is why I love the physiques, because everyone looks like they're ready for a bodybuilding show." And there's no negative to that. I mean, what I mean by that is that division has gone from like muscular beach body to muscular to full blown out, ripped to the bone, full as a house. Yeah. And crazy proportions and tapers. So the level of competition out of all the classes, that level is just the competitiveness in the last 5 years has gone through the roof. And the guys probably, having said all that, the guys probably who are winning are probably not being paid enough to make that win, simply because look at how many people qualify for the Olympia. And if you go to, this weekend to a show in New York, New Jersey, Florida, California, Ohio, and they have bodybuilding 212, if they have bodybuilding in the amateur level, classic bodybuilding, something, women's divisions, bikini, men's physique, right? They'll have 1 million competitors compared to all the others. So, I think you should be to some degree rewarded financially for the people for the division that's feeding the success going forward. You know, the success of the sport, or the continuation of the sport, the growth of the
I'm going to
sport.
make a controversial statement. I'm going to say that I think the men's physique guys, upper body wise, are bigger than the classic physique guys. And I don't even think that men's physique is a feeder division anymore. I think classic is a feeder for men's physique almost at some level.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what you say. I mean, what we're both saying is that an impressive class. It's an impressive.
It became a freakish division in a sense because the
Yeah.
guys are huge. They're big. They're as big as the open bodybuilders. Some of these guys.
No,
You know?
I mean, what's unique about it, besides, I mean, what's really unique about it is you have to have superb
Structure.
times, and you have to have superb, quote, genetics, you know, tapers and cap delts, and you have to have a cap tricep. If you don't have a, you know, cap delts, cap tricep, full pecs, small waist, right ab structure, the way it sits, low lats, you can't do anything with high lats in that division.
No.
If you have high lats, you are toast. I don't care what else you have. It's become a division that you have to be genetically set up for, you know, your shape.
You're 100% right. It's almost like you can't do anything to compensate for lack of structure. It's almost like you're wasting your time in that division. If you want to go to the top, at least doing it, if you don't have superb shape, small waist, like you said, wide shoulders, because in bodybuilding, you can overcompensate with more muscle.
Of course, mass and condition. You could go into, we could be rooting around for the guy with the, you know, the highest lats and, you know, partially torn quad and everything else, and we just say like, but God, he was like huge and crazy hard. The Christmas tree was crazy, even though his back is shaped terrible.
Right, 100%. So we'll see. You know, I wouldn't discount seeing Jeremy do not classic, but 212 bodybuilding at some point. But we'll see. You know, I wanted to bring up another topic, Chris, because you're always like, whenever I ask you about people online, and I'm like, did you see that picture on Instagram? And you always like roll your eyes because you're like, you know, filters and this and that. And Michael Crizo put up a picture recently, and people have been like talking about it. I'm going to pull this up, and I guess it was photoshopped. You know, because all these we have all these experts out there, social media experts who can pick out whether things are photoshopped or not, and people were outraged by the fact that he put up a Photoshop picture, and so he
He's
wrote,
not the first. He's not the first.
I know.
He's not the first guy in the Olympia who's done it. But go ahead.
So I guess when he got caught, he said, "I can post Photoshop pictures all I want. It's my profile." So, what do you think? What do you think about that? I mean, about posting pictures, not necessarily. It's one thing to post a picture and say, "Look, someone photoshopped this. Look how freaky I look." You know, you ever see these pictures of some of the women bodybuilders? They look like, you know, Dorian Yates. You know, but he posted this picture and I guess didn't put the qualifier on it. You know, and
well, was he doing it? I mean, maybe he was doing it to get a reaction for fun for people, like to get under people's skin. I don't see anything wrong with it. If you put up a Photoshop picture, I don't see anything wrong with putting up the filtered pictures, because, you know, at the end of the day, I mean, I've seen lots of filtered pictures of people, pros, good pros, average pros, running up to shows. And how many times off the air have I said, Dave, he's not going to look like this? And guess what? He didn't.
You say it all the time.
And, you know, God, if you want to build enemies, I could give their names, you know, and
you say the names when we talk about them.
Oh, sometimes I do say their names, but sometimes we talk a lot off the air because, and, you know, you can post pictures that are filtered. You know, you get a fan base and people like to look, and sometimes you want to just piss people off anyway. You know, that's how, you know, get under people's skin. There's nothing wrong with it. He's right. It's his Instagram page. Don't come to it. What I just can't get over is people who would go to his Instagram and waste the mental energy to tell him what he probably already knows.
You know, it's just
baffling beyond baffling that people waste energy, mental energy, like critiquing people about their physiques. Like Michael Crizo is going to go to bed at night and like put his head down on the pillow and worry that, oh God, I hope, you know, the haters on my page aren't going to see that I Photoshop my shoulders, calves, and quads.
It's not like he went to the show all shot up and the judges are like, look at this guy, what a disaster. He's doing it for amusement purposes on his page.
Well, at the end of the day, whether people filter or Photoshop, they have to go into the pump-up room, put on the oil, and walk out on stage, and then we're going to see, what they really look like.
I'll tell you why I wouldn't do that. Now, if I was done competing, I might put up fun stuff like that. But I wouldn't do that while I was competing, because what's going to happen now is people see this picture and maybe don't read the headlines, and they're expecting to see this on stage now at the Olympia this coming year. Yeah. And they're not going to see that. They're going to see the real Chrizzo, who doesn't look like this. And it might skew how they feel he looks. Oh, he looked better on Instagram, because they didn't even know that he photoshopped and put up a Photoshop picture. Yeah. So I would never over enhance my pictures on Instagram if I'm still competing, because that's going to then in people's minds say that's what this guy should look like, regardless.
Well, you know what? Judges are people too.
Yep.
And you post a picture of yourself 3 weeks out and you look like skinless. Yeah. And you're sitting there at the Olympia and you're like, God, I can't wait to see so-and-so. And he comes out and you say, gosh, that's a lot different than my expectation. I mean, you don't say as a judge with the pen in hand, that is different than my expectation. You're judging it quick. You go through the line and you just we're creatures of deletion. You just delete like, well, not as good as I thought. Next guy. Okay, wow, geez, he's a lot better than I thought. And then that's not to say they're not. I mean, anyways, you
know why you're 100% right? Because I remember
twice in one show, I'm 100% right, Dave. Go ahead.
Yes, well, you're always right, but unfortunately, especially when it comes to predictions, you're always right. Especially about people that are controversial, but that's another show. I remember back in, I think it was 2001 or 2, I was at the Junior USA in South Carolina, and I had my DavePalumbo.com website. It was probably 2002, and I would go to shows and I would take pictures and I would put them up on my website. Now, mind you, there was no Instagram, there was no Facebook, there was no social media back then, and basically you couldn't get the results of a show until it was over, essentially. And I was doing like the precursor to what I started at Muscular Development, because no one was doing contest coverage in real time. So what I was doing is, at that show, I would take pictures of the prejudging, I put them up on my website. I took like random pictures of guys backstage, and I would see Chris in the lobby. They had computers set up in this hotel. There were judges on there watching, looking at the pictures. And so they're taking another look, in a sense. Now, there was no filters and stuff like that back then, so pretty much the pictures were what the pictures were. But like you said, these judges are human. They're bodybuilders. They want to see the pictures themselves. They're going to go on people's Instagrams and look. It's impossible not to. So don't think that they're not positively and negatively influenced by what they see. So if you put up a picture that looks too good of yourself and they don't really read the headline or something like that, and they see that, then that's the image they have of you in their mind, and that's what they want to see on stage. Because we know a lot of times judges don't just judge you, they judge the best version of you, right? Yeah. They think back to, all right, what was his best look ever? And he didn't make it. Roden doesn't look like he did in 15. Sorry, even though he might be better than some of these guys, we got to mark him down, because that's not the best Roden we've seen. And that happens. That's just the way human nature is. So don't put a false picture of yourself in a judge's head, because that's not a good thing. And then you can't live up to that image. I think it can hurt you down the road.
I agree. I would say you're 99% right. How's that? So I can say ahead of you.
All right, let's see what else. What's my next topic here? The guest posing in Pittsburgh coming up.
Yeah, this week it's this week at Friday or Saturday. So
yeah. What's your prediction? Who's going to look good?
Tell me who's there, and I'll tell you how they're going to look.
Hold on, I'm going to pull up the.
I'll go name by name how I expect it to look.
We know Rami's going to be there. What do you think? What do you think of Rami's going to look like? Good, great, terrible? What are we going to see?
Historically biggest that he's ever been. Mark my words, slam dunk.
Will he be in good shape?
He'll be in good shape, and he'll be way bigger than he's ever been.
Do you think that they're
We can play this show back, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm asking your opinion. So you think that he's gearing up for this to try to make an impression on him?
100%. To use the 100% word 3 times in one show.
Yeah, it's this weekend, the 12th to the 13th, and it's the IFBB Pro League NPC Pittsburgh Championships, and that's going to be.
Who else we got? We got Ramy. Who else?
Well, I'm sure Derek Lunsford will probably be there again. What do you think? What do you think he's going to look like?
Lunsford will look better than last year, for sure. He's also gearing up to leave an impression. If you're not, unfortunately, if you're not gearing up to make an impression for this show, you are making a mistake.
Yeah, I agree.
So Derek is gearing up to leave an impression that I will win the Mr. Olympia, and he's going to be bigger than last year, rounder. His upper body will be better, and he will be in probably close to last year's condition, but he'll be bigger, and then the scuttlebutt will be, his front double was better than Ramy's front double, and his back double was better than Ramy's back double, because he'll be in better condition than Ramy.
You think he will?
Yeah, because naturally it's easier for him to get in condition than Ramy.
It's funny because we critique Ramy so hard, but Ramy is never really terribly out of shape. Like even in the off season, he kind of looks pretty good.
Yeah, but it's been hard for him. He's just, some people have an easier time getting in condition than others.
Right. Well, I think Derek will definitely be impressive. I've been looking at pictures of him on his Instagram, and he, not that those might not be filtered, but he looks huge. He's not the tallest guy, but he's got a lot of mass on that body. And you know what? I don't know how he does it. I guess it's just genetics. That waist stays so small, Chris. Is that a factor of his age? Is it a factor of genetics, a combination?
I think it's probably a combination of all those. He's just crazy round, I remember seeing Phil with the baseball hat on in Germany. I didn't know who Phil was because he had a baseball hat on, and I'd never seen him like in real life, like big. It was way back, and I was like, God, that's the roundest guy I've ever seen. I wonder who that is. And as I got closer and closer, it was Phil. Or someone said it's Phil. I'm like, oh yeah. Just didn't know what he looked like in real life, if that makes sense.
Right.
But he had and then the person who I ran into with that type of round muscle it was last year or the year before. It was at like breakfast at the Arnold, and I said, God, that looks like Phil, like the way Phil used to look, like just the round. And it was Derek. It was Derek. Yeah, no, but what's so funny is talking about round is both. Jose used to tell me all the time, this guy, even when he was 212, but like 238, 212, off season, he'd say he's the roundest guy there is.
Yeah. He definitely has great genetics. Let's look at Hunter Labrada. He'll be there as well. What are you thinking about him and his off-season look here?
Hunter will wear a baseball hat on stage.
Yeah.
He'll probably have he'll have a tan, and it'll be running. Put on pro tan and runs because it always runs. And he'll be big. He'll be very big, and he'll look like that he'll be a factor at the Olympia because he'll be big. And Hunter is wide, and when he gets on stage, he'll be. It's funny. 3 different physiques: Ramy, Derek, Hunter. Ramy's the biggest. It's like Ramy's the biggest. It's like Goldilocks and the oatmeal. Is that what it is? And Derek has the best physique, and he appears to be He appears to be giant big because he's the roundest. I just spoke about roundness. Only in the bodybuilding, if you've been around, would you know the difference? But right in the middle is Hunter. He's round also, but he's not round like Derek. and he's big too, but he's not big like Remy, so he's kind of like just right.
Yeah, I think that what the mistake that Hunter made in the last Olympia was that why did his dad always play so well, even though he was the smallest guy? Conditioning. And I
Listen,
think
let me tell you something about his go ahead. I'll tell you something about his father.
no, I was going to say I think that he's abandoning his conditioning because he wants to come in round and full and dense, and I mean he wants to have that like billowy muscle, and that's great if you can actually build that much muscle, but you can't abandon what makes you special. He's got amazing structure. He's got a small waist, and for his lines to really pop and for him to really be impressive on stage, I think he has to be shrink wrapped, inside out conditioned, and I just don't think he's brought that yet.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. And it's funny, his I can date you back to '87, seeing his father pose at the bodybuilding camp at Loyola Marymount, and cut out. We would have a little bodybuilding show, like we would have a bodybuilding show on like Fridays or something, and Lee was like maybe 8 weeks out from the Olympia, and he guest posed, and he looked gargantuan. I was so unimpressed with him in the gym. Seeing him train, you're like in a tank top. I was like, oh, good shoulders, good arms, good cap tricep, but the sum of the parts when he got on stage, he was in great shape, and he was in great shape, but he also had thin skin for like 8 weeks out. That's how good shape he was in. So it's, I mean, conditioning and balance was Lee Labrada's calling cards, and that's why he was so successful.
Yeah. I think the other person we have to mention at this guest posing that's going to he might be the crowd favorite. And my question is, will he be bigger and more impressive than Ramy? That's Nick Walker.
Now, well, Nick's also gearing up, no pun intended. He's gearing up for the guest posing too. And, Nick he is really impressive. And if he's in good enough shape for this guest posing, people may talk about him being the Mr. Olympia, because he's got the body, where he has to be in good enough shape to be able to appreciate it, Because he's got some, not many, he's got some structural, they're not flaws, but imperfections, not perfect.
Yeah.
But if he's really big and round and got some good abs and not sloppy looking, because the bigger guys kind of sometimes get sloppy because they have to. You have to eat, get big. We might be talking about him as, wow, did you see Nick? He's just like in shows. He's the wild card, right? He's the wild card in shows at the Olympia, and he's the wild card at the guest posing. Like, what will he look like? What will he look like compared to everyone else? Great bodybuilder, but just he's just improving by leaps and bounds, just like Derek. So it's gonna be a great. I mean, it's gonna be a great event because fans want to see it, and the reason fans want to see it more than ever is because last year when they saw Derek, they started talking, and they were all right about doing the Open and doing really, really, really good in the Open. So it was almost like a collective prediction by the bodybuilding community, all the fans, like, well, you got to watch out for Derek. Whereas previous Pittsburghs was just like, cameos. You'd see Phil Fat, right?
Right.
You'd see like Ramy downsized a little bit. You'd see,
Roden Harville.
You'd see Dennis Wolf. You'd see Dexter looking like Dexter, but not like shrink wrapped and not as big as he is. It seems like this Pittsburgh people are gonna, want to make a big impression because they know everyone's watching, and they know that they want to get that hype behind them, because the hype last year was real. It was very real it was real for everyone. It was real for Nick. It was real for Derek. The hype was real because he looked really good last year. For Hunter, even though it didn't pan out well at the Olympia for Hunter, he was fourth and then he slipped down a couple of notches. So it's going to be.
What about this guy?
Which
Arnold
guy?
Classic champ, Samson Dowda.
Is he there?
I think I see him on the poster.
Well,
I can't imagine him not being there. Definitely Mannion would invite him. No one's saying no to Mannion. Only Ramy didn't show up. The only person in the history wasn't showing up. But yeah, Samson will be there, I'm sure. And he obviously is coming off the big Arnold win. He might weigh more than Ramy on stage, although that's debatable. Ramy goes up to like 340. I think Samson's about 320, but he's taller than Ramy. Will Samson go there and have people saying, hey, this guy's the next Mr. Olympia? That's really the question.
The answer is yes. The answer is yes, because when he was 6 at the Olympia this year, I thought he looked great.
Yeah.
And it slipped out of my mind. It slipped out of my mouth. It was a Freudian slip. I was talking to someone, and I said, Mr. Olympia. And they go like, for this show? And I'm like, no. And they say, like in the future, like 2 or 3 years. And I said, I remember distinctly, I said, maybe next year. And they laughed at me, and I thought, well, one, he's coming on so strong, but two, he's on stage, he's taller than, it's not a basketball event, but he's taller than Nick.
Everyone else.
He's taller than everyone else. And it helps him a lot. Your eyesight, and he's wide. He doesn't look that wide from behind. That's the only flaw he's got. Like back Glassford's not wide, back double's not wide, but from the front, he appears wide because of sweep to the thighs. His delts are very capped. He's got really good triceps, great midsection. So he appears a lot wider standing than other people. So if he's there, he's there. If he's there, then that means Milos is going to be there. Milos is going to prep him the last week for it.
Milos is going to be there, yeah.
Again, it's Vegas at midnight. The Samson is 319 and Ramy is 339, but there's a height differential. And I told Ramy, I said, be careful. And I love Derek like a brother, but right?
Down pat. You might do a better Milos impression than Milos actually does of
himself.
I
do it because I love Milos.
Oh, of course.
Milos, what time is it? Milos right now is doing, I love Milos. Right now, he's doing something, as we speak, bodybuilding related. He's either on his phone talking to someone about bodybuilding, on his phone texting someone about bodybuilding, or he's eating one of his meals that he's still a bodybuilding meal.
I was going to say he's probably training himself.
Yeah, he's training himself, or he's relaxing watching TV and he's thinking about bodybuilding.
Yeah, no, if Samson is there, which I think he is, Milos will definitely be there. And you're right. He'll make sure that Samson weighs 1 pound more than Ramy does, no matter what he's got to do to him, to get him up to that weight. But you know what? The funny thing is that Samson really holds the weight well. I mean, and he actually looks like he can hold more. He's a guy who legitimately could probably be 350 and not look, not unaesthetic, at 350. He can look like it fills out his physique, type of thing.
Yeah, I would be if I was competing at the Olympia.
I'd be very scared.
And I was like a top 5 guy. I'd be worried about everybody, but I'd be worried about him, meaning going to the next level again, because he's capable of doing that.
I love to give you these scenarios because you always get it right. But let's say Samson was entering into the 1994 Olympia. All right, Dorian was coming off that crazy win, and someone's interviewing Dorian and saying, Dorian, what do you think about this guy, Samson Dowda? He's from the UK. He's your home, from your hometown. He's got a lot of size, momentum. Just won the Arnold. You think he can beat you?
Who? He would not. We started about social media, Michael Crizo, about like people worried about what people may say about them. Dorian would say, "Who?" And just and he would just be annoyed with your question because it doesn't apply to him whatsoever. And that's an advantage because that's his mindset. And who knows if he'd still have the mindset with social media? He probably still would, but there was not that distraction of social media.
I asked Dorian today, hey, you think Samson, looking the way he does now, going into the Olympia, would he have been able to beat you?
No.
And if I said, well, why not, Dorian? He's bigger than you. He's taller, better structure. Conditioning, right?
Well, yeah. Are you asking me or are you asking Dorian? Me being Dorian?
I'm asking you as Dorian. Yeah, you're Dorian right now in this day and age.
Dorian would say, I don't see the condition there, Dave. I don't see the true condition that I have. I can't do his voice, but he wouldn't see the true condition, and he'd tear him apart on the back shots. Like he'd tell you, that his back is not there, his back lat spread's not there, his back double's not there. He'd tell you that he'd beat him. Depends which Dorian, but if you're going back to 93, 94, front lat spread, Dorian would, of course, even go to calves. He would start to nitpick on calves, even though Samson has good calves. Different physiques, but
the reason I even asked you that, there's a reason why I asked you that, because you're right. It would be Dorian would go to the back. He would talk about his back being much better. He would also talk about the conditioning that he brings. And I think that's how Samson gets beat at the Olympia. I think at the Olympia is notoriously, judged pretty, harshly on conditioning. They really are sticklers for conditioning. And, look at the guys who, won last year, Hadi Shupin, and Derek, the two most conditioned guys, and Nick Walker, so there's your three most conditioned guys on stage. So I think if Samson doesn't bring a tighter look than he did at the Arnold, I think he's going to have trouble beating those top three guys.
Yeah, no, it's the Olympia. When you're being judged at the Olympia, I think the judges want to see no stone left unturned, and that means they want to see something special. And at that level, everyone's big.
Yeah.
So they need to see something that's truly special. And that's look at how successful Hadi has been from day one at the Olympia.
Yeah.
Of course, this year I think he was fuller than ever. Not fuller, he was bigger, and he brought tremendous condition still at a bigger weight, and that's what put him over the top, because he was bigger. So they want to see like something special, and usually something special means conditioning.
Right. We saw a bit. Look, there's no doubt about it. Samson was better at the Arnold than he was at the Olympia, but he's still not, Dorian conditioned. And until he can bring that to the stage, I don't think he wins an Olympia. Unless the Olympia lineup is just so off one year that he just, because let's face it, he won the Arnold because Nick Walker was off a little bit. Andrew Jack's legs are not where they need to be yet. They will be, obviously. So, Samson was the best guy on stage, is really what it amounted to, right?
Yeah, it was,
Olympia is going to be a different story. He's going to have to bring another level of conditioning to the Olympia.
Yeah, no, I think that, the Olympia sometimes comes down to it's a conditioning war often. Yeah. Like you said. So I think, I think the size is there. I think the muscle maturity is almost there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the condition is good. It's not like he's got bad conditioning. I thought his condition was at the prejudging was a little questionable. I don't know if it was oil or tanning, but at the night show it was good. But I think I like Hadi's diced legs and Hadi's diced most muscular versus other people's, including Samson's, and it tends to expose him a little in terms of conditioning.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Like I said, I agree with you. I think he's going to be probably one of the most impressive guys in Pittsburgh because of his height and his size and fullness, and he looks good when he's full and round. You know what I mean? He doesn't have to be, crushed right at Pittsburgh. He's going to look impressive because he's going to be so big.
Yeah.
And that's going to be Ramy too. Ramy's going to be impressive too because he's going to be so big. The fans are going to love it. They're going to go crazy. And I think that those two guys will probably be the standouts in Pittsburgh. Not taking anything away from Derek. Well, Nick Walker will be too because Nick's huge too. I think those three guys just size-wise, because the fans like size. That's, I always did very well at guest posings when I was back in my day, because the fans love big, freaky guys, when they're watching from the audience, because it's impressive. They know it's not the Olympia. They're not judging on symmetry and shape and condition. They want to see big, freaky guys up there, because that's what motivates bodybuilders who go to these shows to want to be better. And I remember seeing Dorian when he guest posed in the off season at that Atlantic States in 92 or 93, 93. I was like, man, that's what I want to look like. And he wasn't in contest shape, but he was huge, absolutely huge.
Maybe we can get like Tyler to like pitch in a mock, just for the fun of it, a mock judging card from the pre-judging, like who was your, I know it doesn't mean anything, but who was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6?
Yeah, they should judge the guest.
We started, Dave, we started with like Tamer maybe not being appropriate. Right. Can you imagine? Well,
hold on. Hold on.
The best. I thought, Derek looked the best, or Nick looked the best, or
you got a great freaking idea. What if they gave away, $5,000 to the most impressive guest poser, of the Pittsburgh, pro weekend? And let these, you don't even have to have the real judges judge. You can get a panel of like ex bodybuilders, because everyone goes to that show. You get Milos up there, all these guys.
Maybe next week we can use the film. We can get Species to give 5,000 away. I can be a judge. You can be a judge. Milos. We can get like Fakri. We can get George Farah, and like a judging panel of 9. We can throw, because everyone. You know what the problem is? Everyone's so biased. And Milos. We can throw the 4 highs and the 4 lows. Right.
There'll be only one counting judge basically for the whole thing. Yeah. But it would be fun, if like a supplement company.
Let's get Milos on the show next week to talk about it.
All right.
I told Samson is the biggest, and I text Jim and Tyler, and I said, if you're judging overall, look at it. There's more things, Dave, to judge. You talk about Dorian condition. There's more things than condition. There's symmetry, beauty, balance, fullness, roundness, right?
Well, yeah, we don't even need Milos on. You could just dress up as Milos.
The 9 dimensions of the way you have to look on stage by Milos.
No, it's a good idea. We'll get Milos on the show next week to after the guest
be great.
Do analysis.
Great.
Yeah, it'll be fun. That's something that's fun. That's because you know what? There's no. It doesn't count, but it's fun. It's a fun show, and you know what? Jim got a great idea to start inviting the top guys in the sport to his show every year. After all, he is the president. Pittsburgh is the home of the IFBB Pro League and the NPC. So it's great that these guys come and do that guest. And that's been going on for years. I mean, I did that guest posing one year, I think. Or no, I was at a booth.
That's what I said, Dave. It was before. It was just like a cameo. Like, oh, Jim, you have a show? I'll come. We'll come. You can be fat and not be this now with social media. It's like, oh my God, someone's so fat.
You're being evaluated almost. Yeah, it's like it's nerve-wracking almost for bodybuilders at this point, because you know what? They're being evaluated by the court of public opinion, which is sometimes worse than being evaluated by the judges.
Yeah.
Because the court of public opinion can sway the judges a lot of times. So you have. I mean, I hate to say it because he's not here. May he rest in peace. But I mean, Roden got crucified at that Pittsburgh one year. And I believe that really motivated him to be able to win the Olympia, because he was like, I just wasn't ready for this thing. He didn't know he had to prepare for it. And people just harshly judged the fact that he wasn't in shape and he didn't have a lot of muscle. And then he went on this rampage and looked incredible at the Olympia. So, the Pittsburgh definitely has an influence over what we see on that Olympia stage. There's no doubt about it.
Well, it influences it's going to influence the way the guys are coming to look at the show, but it's also going to motivate them after.
Yeah.
Everyone wants, it's like a little sneak peek. You get to see like yourself standing next to so and so, and you say like, okay, I'm gonna put it into 5th gear now.
Rizzo could put on the I don't know if he's not going to be there, but he can put on the Photoshop costume and show up if he wanted to.
Yeah.
Right?
He could just Photoshop a picture right next to the lineup and say, "This is the way I look."
I think Chris is great. I can't wait to see what the improvements he's made in this offseason. But I will tell you this: that looking at that picture is completely skewed. Now I want him to look like the picture.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, a lot of good storylines going on in bodybuilding now. Because of the Pittsburgh is coming up. That's exciting. Then we got the New York Pro right after that. We'll talk about that next week. And the season is we're really in the heart of the contest season now. We're going to start to see who's going to qualify for the Olympia in addition to the people that have already qualified, obviously. And the storylines will continue to go on. The one question I had for you before we wrap up, what's going on with Sergio Oliva Jr.? What show is he doing?
He's trying to get.
He should have done that. He should have done that show in Brazil.
Brazil, I know. Well, I mean, we were just talking about that. Somebody hit him.
Yeah.
Said, you know what? Could you imagine if the guy hit him from like the tail end of his car, right? Can you imagine if the guy was speeding up and I said, Sergio, good thing you're a fast driver, because if you were driving like 4 miles per hour or more, he would have jumped right in front of the car. You might have run him right over, instead of him hitting the tail end of your car.
Right.
So he's trying to formalize the paperwork so that he can get to one of these shows, so 2 of these shows, right. New York.
Oh, good. That'd be great.
Pittsburgh, not New York or California. It's a nail biter because.
I would love to. I think New York Pro would be great if Sergio comes back and wins that thing again. That would give him a lot of momentum, I think.
Yeah. Well, he's like Cedric. He don't believe in momentum. I said, man, Dave, momentum it'll mean nothing.
Cedric didn't like it because it put pressure on him for the next show.
Someone mentioned that put pressure on him, but they saw you got momentum. You ever see like a Knicks game? The Knicks could get all the momentum in the world. They're ahead by 20 and they lose by 5. Right?
Cedric didn't like any pressure on him. He wanted to be the guy who had zero pressure on him. That's why he liked the Arnold, because at the beginning of the year, no one's expecting anything of anyone. And so then he'd win the Arnold and they'd be like, momentum going into the Olympia. And then as soon as they said that, it was you knew it was going to be a disaster for him at the Olympia.
Yeah.
So anyway, may you rest in peace, Cedric, too. We miss you as well as we miss Sean Roden. But the show must go on, as they say, and it's going to be an exciting weekend. Good luck to all the bodybuilders that will be in Pittsburgh and be competing at the amateur show as well. For now, though, we're out of time, as we say every week here at Heavy Muscle Radio with Heavy Muscle Radio.
The truth hurts 100%.
It does. We'll see you guys next week.